fun that he called for another elephant to come. Two elephants were out at play upon a spider's web one day. They had such enormous fun that they called for everyone to come.
This video is brought to you by Patreon. Patreon! No more monkeys jumping on the bed. It's difficult to discuss Nickelodeon as a whole. Even just discussing 40 years of history in any depth is too much for most projects. But even for Knacks, where we talk about every television show that ever aired on the channel, it's still a challenge because you're limited to public information. Stuff from newspapers and press releases and interviews. One thing this project is not privy to is most of the behind-the-closed-doors business deals and the market research that really guided how Nickelodeon changed over time. Most of my audience has come on board because of their nostalgic memories for these old television programs, the warm fuzzies in reconnecting with these 40-year-old cartoons and puppet shows. And by all means, keep feeling those warm fuzzies. I'm personally going to be feeling them in this episode. But because of that, it's easy to ignore that Nickelodeon, among other things, is a product of and affected by capitalism. It's not just a business, but come 1987, it was a successful business. Nick's first game show, Double Dare, not only became the most successful thing on the channel, it swiftly became the highest rated show in all of cable television. And in a world of shareholders, a world of MTV networks and Viacom and Sumner Redstone all looking over your shoulder, being successful means you have to be even more successful next time. Under capitalism, you can't stop growing profits. You can't stop expanding. You can never be satisfied. Ad revenue has to keep going up. Cable subscriptions have to keep going up. Profits going down is bad, and profits plateauing is somehow even worse. I bring this up because I feel the next three shows we're going to be talking about on Knacks are, in their own ways, a response to Nickelodeon's success in the previous year and a step towards becoming more profitable in 1988. The first of these shows was an attempt to bring fresh energy into the channel's offerings for its early morning preschool audience, in preparation for a significant rebranding just 3 months later. Premiering on Nickelodeon on October 5th, 1987, this is Sharon, Lois and Bram's Elephant Show.
Look, up in the sky, on the beach, in the park.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, yes.
Sharon, Lois and Bram's Elephant Show.
Love stuff that we care about.
Like singing, like dancing, like messing around.
Have you ever seen fruits and vegetables wearing clothes?
Watch Elephant land in your neighborhood every day.
Oh, Elephant, there you are!
On Sharon, Lois and Bram's Elephant Show, only on Nick Jr.
Summarizing Elephant Show is a lot like summarizing a kaleidoscope. Episodes have some common elements and structures, but none of the episodes feel that attached to each other. There's no solid concept to build plots off of. In fact, plots are optional. Sometimes it'll be about helping a friend out of a tree. Sometimes it'll just be about kids wandering around a zoo. Sometimes we're just going to reimagine Goldilocks and the Three Bears. What Elephant Show is a platform for the titular children's folk music act of, well, I'll just let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm Lois.
And I'm... Bram.
Sharon Hampson, Lois Lillenstein, and Bram Morrison lead us through songs that may or may not be related to the day's themes.
The sweetest song that I ever heard was a serenade of the mockingbird. She can whistle, she can sing, she can do most anything.
Won't spring back, triple garlic chowder. It was tuneful, every spoonful made you yodel louder.
Have you had a hug today?
They're accompanied by Elephant, a costume character who speaks with tuba noises, and fellow folk musician Eric Nagler. Nagler's role often involved showing children how to build makeshift instruments with things you can find around the house or out in the wild.
Sitting around, playing the spoons. You don't have to know any tunes, just think of some poems you already know. Put them together and let yourself go. Like Bob, Bob, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes sir, 3 bags full. One for my master, one for my dame, and one for the little kid who lives in the lane. I said one for the little kid who lives in the lane.
Each episode also features a special guest, usually a musical guest to perform a number or two, or a character actor coming in to play something goofy and comedic.
Now if you've got a worry, well you just don't have to worry, hurry. You can chase those worries with a smile.
Oh, I get it. Your friend is a cat, isn't it?
Well, no, not exactly a cat.
That's
It's
right.
not a cat.
Not exactly.
No,
Oh, a raccoon?
not exactly a raccoon
It's
either.
not.
Absolutely not exactly.
Oh, now I don't understand.
The number of songs crammed into a half-hour episode are quite substantial, averaging about 12 musical numbers per show if you count the theme song and the closing song, though some episodes go as many as 14, a density of songs we haven't seen around here since Cube-era Pinwheel. The variety of songs is substantial as well, a healthy mix of original numbers, folk music classics, nursery rhymes, and even a few Disney songs.
I've heard a fireside chat, saw a baseball bat, and I laughed so hard I thought I'd die. But I think I've seen about most everything when I see an elephant fly.
When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are.
Salakadoola means
Magic-a-boolaroo, but the thingamabob that does the job is bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. Salakadoola, magic-a-boola, bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. Things will be better, believe it or not. Bibbidi-bobbidi,
bibbidi-bobbidi.
bibbidi-bobbidi. Woo!
For 4 of the show's 5 seasons, concert footage of Sharon, Lois and Bram's live shows were also edited into each episode, complete with child reaction shots.
Hey ho, makes you feel so fine, looking out across the orchard in the bright sunshine. Hey ho, makes you feel so free, standing on the top of an apple tree. Hey ho, makes you lose your mind if you sing this song about 1,000 times. Hey ho, makes you feel so free, standing at the top of an apple tree.
And of course, every episode ended with the trio's signature song, Skinamarink. So, lots of music, some concert footage, a guest star, and everyone singing Skinamarink at the end. That's an episode of The Elephant Show. Everything else is up in the air, with stories ranging from simple to the fantastical. In one episode, everyone just hangs out on a farm for the day. In another, Sharon, Lois, and Bram discover a magical antique shop where the items whisk you away to magical settings. You just never knew what you were going to get in an episode of The Elephant Show. At the heart of this enterprise is, of course, Sharon, Lois, and Bram, who had been entertaining Canadian children as a group since 1978, but as individuals, their careers can be traced back to the 60s. Sharon Hampson, born Sharon Troston in Toronto, Canada on March 31st, 1943, was educated in piano and cello, and she later took to guitar and folk music and began to perform professionally at the age of 17. In 1961, Sharon appeared as a singer in a Christmas program for local television, beginning a number of small appearances on Canadian television for the next half-decade. In 1964, Sharon published her first album, Songs for Children and Other People, a duet LP with musical satirist Michael Cochette. Despite Cochette's background in comedy, it was a pretty straightforward children's folk album with half the songs in English and half the songs in French.
Jamais on a vu, jamais on verra, aussi bon que ré, comme celui qu'on en a. Jamais on a vu, jamais on verra, aussi bon que ré, comme celui qu'on en a.
Sharon also toured the coffee house circuit in both Canada and the United States, where she would become briefly acquainted with Bramwell Morrison. Born in Toronto on December 18, 1940, Bram was taking philosophy classes in college in the early 60s when he crossed paths with folk singer Alan Mills, who Knacks viewers may remember as the man who A. wrote I Know an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly, and B. was the actor who played tugboat Captain McGregor in Adventures in Rainbow Country. Bram would end up being Mills' accompanying guitarist for a number of years.
By and by, stars shine a number 1, a number 2, a number 3, good Lord.
Bram did additional gigs as restaurant entertainment and a couple of small television appearances before stepping away from performing for a time to become a grade school music teacher. Sharon Troston, now Sharon Hampston, had also taken a break from touring to get married and raise her 2 children, but she continued to be involved in children's music programs, including Mariposa in the Schools, an annual children's folk festival founded in 1969. In the 70s, Bram returned to performing, and through the Mariposa Festival, he and Sharon upgraded from minor acquaintances to friends. And that's where they also met the third of our trio. Lois Lillenstein, born Lois Ada Goldberg on July 10, 1936, had a very different background from the other two. For one, she was American, growing up in Chicago, Illinois. Her background wasn't in folk music, but classical training, graduating with a bachelor's degree in music from the University of Michigan in 1958. She would end up becoming a preschool music teacher, becoming well regarded in that field to the point of leading seminars and workshops on music in young children's education, which eventually led her to the Mariposa festivals and meeting Sharon and Bram in the late 70s. So you've got 3 very talented musicians, respected in their field of children's music, roughly 60 years of experience between them as solo artists and educators. And in 1978, they went, hey, we should team up and record a record together. Guys, Sharon, Lois, and Bram are a super group. Like, they're the children's folk music equivalent of Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. There are no 3 people with as much experience as us, on the floor, nose to nose with children. We've really done our homework. We know kids, and we respect them. Now officially a trio, the 3 of them borrowed $22,000 from family and friends, and along with their producer and occasional percussionist, Bill Usher, Sharon, Lois, and Bram formed Elephant Records, found some studio space in Kensington Market in Toronto, and published their first album, One Elephant, Deux Elephants. With 32 tracks, One Elephant, Deux Elephants is a healthy mix of folk song classics like She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain and 5 Little Monkeys, and original works like the title song, which alternates between English and French for each verse.
Deux éléphants allaient jouer sur une toile d'araignée. Ils s'amusaient tellement bien qu'ils appelaient à un autre viens.
The album was published in September of 1978, and after 3 months had sold over 27,000 copies, well making back the money borrowed. But it just kept growing, becoming certified gold in August of 1979, and hitting 100,000 sales by 1980. One Elephant, Deux Elephants would set a record for the fastest selling children's music album at that time. Now obviously there was a market for children's music decades before this, we've already heard some examples, but you might have noticed that a lot of that music was quite slow and calm, and there's certainly a place for that. But the music Sharon, Lois, and Bram were putting out was much more playful, much more upbeat, music that encouraged singing and dancing and play. We've put a lot of scenes on the record. We've given children a stage to act something out on for 2 minutes, create their own fantasy, then move on. With the diversity we've provided, each arrangement and genre evokes certain colors and feelings, and it all acts as a catalyst for different types of play.
Someone asked Woody Guthrie, what's a children's song? And Woody said, and it is engraved in our hearts, a children's song is any song children like to sing.
So we decided that we'd try to make the music as interesting for the children as it is for us. And we used some of the best musicians that we could find that would make as musical records as we possibly could.
I think one of the most important things that hopefully we have done for children is to introduce music to them as something that is, as it is to us, a source of enormous pleasure and something that they can derive pleasure from now and forever.
Sharon, Lois, and Bram also had strong, identifiable personalities. And they weren't the only ones. This was around the same time that other upbeat, big personality Canadian children's folk singers were finding large audiences. Sharon, Lois, and Bram were contemporaries with acts like Fred Penner, and especially Raffi. There has always been a market in children's records, and there's always been some good records available. But people like Pete Seeger and Alan Mills never had any widespread promotion. Raffi came along, made an exciting contemporary record, took an aggressive approach to marketing, and then persevered through a lot of resistance.
The Canadian children's music industry was far and away the leaders in that industry. There were good performers in the States, but somehow, and maybe it's because we had a national radio network that, CBC, where we could be singing in Toronto and speaking to people in Newfoundland and Vancouver.
Sharon, Lois, and Bram's star grew fast. In July of 1979, CTV gave them their first television special. They released their second album, Smorgasbord, in September of that same year, followed shortly with the group's first national tour across Canada. It was during touring that they began to develop the idea of an on-stage elephant character.
Well, the elephant came from a song. One elephant went out to play upon a spider's web one day. And at the time we were doing our first concerts, there was a production of Babar by the Toronto Dance Theatre, was it?
That's right, yep.
And we borrowed a costume and put our producer's girlfriend into it to appear while we were doing that song, and it was just a very casual kind of, wouldn't that be fun?
And all of a sudden, that elephant is our sidekick, and people love the elephant, and we are forever joined at the hip.
The idea of a Sharon, Lois, and Bram television series began floating around as early as October of 1979, with CBC workshopping a weekend series called Sharon, Lois, and Bram Downtown. This show didn't get off the ground, but as the 70s became the 80s, the trio would be no strangers to television. In fact, the Elephant Show wasn't even the first time Nickelodeon viewers were introduced to them, as Sharon, Lois, and Bram made multiple guest appearances on today's special.
Muffy, Muffy, look at this. Look, tonight in concert, Sharon, Lois, and Bram.
Sharon, Lois, and Bram, golly gee. Now there's a show that I'd like to see.
Here's a song about our favorite dog, Rags. Why don't you do the actions with us? They go like this. Flip-flop, wig-wag, zigzag. He goes. Flip-flop, wig-wag, zigzag. He goes. Flip-flop, wig-wag, zigzag. I love Rags and he loves me.
Producers kept coming to us. Yeah, we'd like to do a series with you. And then they'd say, do you have any money? And we'd say, no, do you have any money? Well, no. And then one day, these two guys came in and said, we have money.
And they did.
In April of 1983, the trio were approached by producers Arnie Zapersky and Bruce Glosson from a new independent production house called Cambion in hopes to make a 13-episode television show. They shopped the show around a bit, and it came to no surprise that CBC was still interested in getting the trio onto their channel. To flesh out the cast, folk singer and contemporary Eric Nagler was brought on board. Nagler is an interesting figure in his own right, an American who came to Canada as a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War. In 1978, Nagler worked for the Homemade Music Program, a touring show that showed children how to make instruments from objects around the house, something that would be implemented into the Elephant Show. After the Elephant Show wrapped in 1989, Nagler would go on to headline his own show, Eric's World, premiering in 1991 and surprisingly running for 5 whole seasons. Surprising because also in 1991, Nagler was charged with sexual assault of a 12-year-old girl. God, there's always somebody. In the interest of fairness, the charges were dropped after a polygraph. May as well have used tarot cards. Let's move on. The Elephant Show premiered on CBC on October 8th, 1984, and found immediate success critically and in the ratings. By the summer of 1987, the show was catching over 769,000 Canadian viewers. So what makes the Elephant Show work? Well, naturally, if our three leads weren't charismatic and engaging, you wouldn't have a show. Sharon, Lois, and Bram are three total goofballs, dressing up and cracking bad jokes, and occasionally just breaking out into full-blown cream pie fights.
Oh, Lois.
You are watching a scene played by highly skilled professionals. Do not, I repeat, do not attempt to do this in your own home. I repeat, this scene is played by highly skilled professionals.
Even more than that, though, they were approachable. While not quite dispensing the wisdom of a Mr. Rogers, Sharon, Lois, and Bram maintained an air of respect for the child audience, never talking down to them, and finding ways to turn everything into song and games. For example, in the very first episode, one of the children in the cast mix up Sharon and Lois, and this is how they respond.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Shanna. But guess what? I'm Lois. Folks get our names confused a lot.
You know what? Let's get this straightened out once and for all. Sharon, how about you start?
Okay, I'm Sharon Bumbaron, Stickerarin Joe Farron, Stickerarin Joe Farron. That's how you spell Sharon.
I'm Lois Bumboa, Stickeroas Joe Foas, Stickeroas Joe Foas. That's how you spell Lois.
I'm Bram, Bum-Bam, Stick-A-Ram, Joe-Fam, Stick-A-Ram, Joe-Fam. That's how you spell Bram.
But don't try spelling your name that way on your next test.
Okay, Bram.
It's a warm, safe space for childhood play and expression, the kind of show that gets your 5-year-old dancing in front of the TV. The fact that the show had no consistent structure meant you never knew what you were going to get episode to episode, if the episode would even have a story, or if it would be a string of loosely related songs. Lots of songs. Now, I was only able to get a hold of about 2/3 of the episodes for this project, so I might be wrong in this, but it seems like that, outside the opening and closing themes, there's not a single song repeated in any other episode. We should also talk about why the show works as a commercial product. Sharon, Lois, and Bram's Elephant Show is fun and inviting and silly, and I love it to pieces, but it's also a big old commercial for Sharon, Lois, and Bram, the musical act. For one, the density of music and the lack of repeating songs means that if you watched them perform a song and really wanted to hear it again, you either had to have been recording the episode on a VCR, had to wait for the episode to shuffle its way back in reruns, or you could ask your parents to buy you one of Sharon, Lois, and Bram's many albums so you can hear it again and again. For most of the episodes in the show's first 4 seasons, concert footage was edited in. And boy, a Sharon, Lois, and Bram concert sure seems fun. Look at all these happy children and their happy parents. It sure would be great to go to one of these. I wonder when their next tour is.
No one chugas like they do. No one eensy weensies like they do. And of course, no one can skin-a-marink like Sharon, Lois, and Bram. And now Nick Jr. proudly presents their great big tour. July 31st in Wallingford, Connecticut at Oakdale Musical Theater. August 1st in Poughkeepsie, New York at Mid-Hudson Civic Center. August 2nd in Latham, New York at Starlight Music Theater. The great big tour is a great big chance for the whole family to sing along, sway along, and play along with Sharon, Lois, and Bram and the songs America grew up with.
When comparing it to other shows we've discussed on Knacks, The Elephant Show has less in common with other preschool programming like Today's Special or Pinwheel, and has more in common with The Monkees, a fun comedic romp to entice you to spend money on this musical act. Let me be clear, none of that takes away from how great the show is, it's just the reality of the business. Commercial viability, brand synergy, it's not glamorous or nostalgic, but it's a part of the process of making popular mass media. And it became even more important with the show's 3rd season, which funded itself by publicly selling shares of the show, 322 shares valued at $5,000 apiece. Now the show had public investors, turning profits was becoming more important than ever. One thing to focus on would be bringing the show into foreign markets. Enter Nickelodeon.
Everybody knows an elephant never forgets, and neither do Sharon, Lois, Bram, or Nick Jr. We know how much you like The Elephant Show, and so we're bringing you more of the stuff you like. There's a whole trunk full of songs and adventures, and all of your friends will be there too.
Does your chewing gum lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight?
So settle in and watch Sharon, Lois, and Bram's Elephant Show on Nick Jr.
The Elephant Show's October 1987 premiere on Nickelodeon corresponded with Sharon, Lois, and Bram's first concert tour to the United States, because the brand synergy is strong. Our audience has exploded in numbers since the fall of '87. Nickelodeon, according to their figures, reaches 39 million households. That's bigger than the entire population of individuals of Canada. That blows my mind. While I wasn't able to find exact ratings, by all accounts the Elephant Show did really well on Nickelodeon, some anecdotal sources saying it was the channel's third highest rated show at one point. At the very least, it would end up a cornerstone show for the fledgling Nick Jr. block that premiered the next year. And Nick held onto the show as long as it seemed reasonably possible. Elephant Show's fifth season, the only one produced while Nickelodeon was airing it, would prove to be its last. Sharon, Lois, and Bram decided they wanted to refocus on touring and making albums while still having time for their own families. Plus, there was the whole public shares thing. People who invested money in the show weren't going to see a return until the show stopped spending money. And so the Elephant Show ended, but you wouldn't know it from turning on the TV, as reruns in both Canada and in the States stretched on for years. With a solid 65 episodes in the bank, Nickelodeon aired Sharon, Lois, and Bram's Elephant Show all the way to October 21st, 1994, a solid 7-year run. In fact, as a personal note, it was the perfect amount of time for me to grow up with it, love it, and then grow out of it. Sharon, Lois, and Bram's Elephant Show is the program that I have the strongest nostalgic feelings for so far in Knacks. There'll be a few shows I feel even more strongly about in the future, but the warm nostalgia fuzzies I've been feeling working on this episode have been off the charts. It was business as usual for Sharon, Lois, and Bram going into the 90s, recording music and playing concerts. They became spokespeople for UNICEF, and they would eventually return to television in 1997 with Skinamarink TV.
Hello, we're on the air. Surprise us everywhere. Your wacky, nutty, funny friends are here. So cheer. We're Sharon, Lois, Bram.
That's me.
That's me.
I am.
With Copycat.
And Ella, we're complete.
How sweet.
It's not a bad program by any stretch. Our trio is just as charismatic as ever, but here they traded in the naturalistic settings of the Elephant Show and created something more flashy and artificial. Skinamarink TV ended in 1999. And Sharon, Lois, and Bram as a complete trio would not last much longer. In 2000, Lois's husband passed away, and she decided to semi-retire and pull back from touring. While she still worked on the albums, Sharon, Lois, and Bram became Sharon, Bram, and Friends when it came time to doing concerts. And really, by 2000, with 22 years under their belts, a whopping 37 albums produced, and 2 multi-season hit television shows, they all deserve to dial things back and soak in the accolades. For example, in 2002, Sharon, Lois, and Bram were made members of the Order of Canada, the second highest honor of merit you can get in the country, Lois becoming an honorary member since she wasn't Canadian. In 2004, there was a celebratory television special, 25 years of Skinamarink, with a lot of celebrity praise for the duo.
And for me, I just wanted to say congratulations. My twin sister and I loved watching you on Sunday mornings on the CBC, and thanks for the beautiful music.
There was a 30th anniversary concert in 2008, and in 2014, the Sharon, Lois, and Bram Playground opened up in Toronto. Sadly, Lois Lillenstein passed away after a battle of cancer on April 22, 2015, at the age of 78. And that was pretty much that. Sharon Hampson and Bram Morrison performed a farewell tour in 2019, and while we might see the odd performance here and there, Sharon and Bram are both pushing 80 and probably won't be with us much longer, so anything else from them is just gravy. Sharon, Lois, and Bram had a very simple goal in what they did. They weren't educators. They weren't about teaching you your ABCs or 1, 2, 3s. They just wanted to make the most fun, entertaining, playful music for young children as possible. And when it came to the Elephant Show, they succeeded in transferring that playfulness to the television. Sharon, Lois and Bram's Elephant Show can't really be defined by plot or character or even theme. You never knew what you were going to get with each episode. But you did know you were going to have a fun time. Guaranteed.
Skinnamarink-a-dinky-dink, skinnamarink-a-doo. I love you. Skinnamarink-a-dinky-dink, skinnamarink-a-doo. I love you.
I love you in the morning and in the afternoon.
I love you in the evening and underneath the moon.
Skinnamarink-a-dinky-dink, skinnamarink-a-doo.
I love you. I love your singing. I love you. You're all terrific. I love you.
We'll see you next time.
I love you too. Boo-boo-be-doo. Yeah.
Next time, Nickelodeon breaks out of its 2 animated shows per year business plan in a big, big way. Today's research shout-out goes to the official Sharon, Lois and Bram website. It paints an even more complete picture of the trio than I do here, with a timeline, gallery of promotional materials. They even used to host a bunch of the Elephant Show episodes for a while, which is where most of this footage comes from. If you still haven't gotten your nostalgic fix for them yet, the website is a great stop. Thank you all for watching. If you'd like to support Knacks and other Pop Arena projects, consider contributing to my Patreon. Every dollar goes to production values, research materials, and warm socks for the coming winter months. You can also support Knacks by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that bell icon for notifications, leaving a comment, sending a one-time donation through Ko-fi or PayPal, following me on Twitter, and sharing Knacks with all your friends. Thank you so much for watching, and Black Lives Matter.